I think Kyle's a good person. Kyle as a competitor is petty, right? He's condescending. He's kind of arrogant. He takes this kind of Urban Meyer approach where disrespecting your opponent is part of the game. I'm grateful that we have Kalani as a coach because Kalani comes from a place of respect, a place of literally loving everyone. Hello and welcome to the App Dave Podcast Studio. The Holy War week is over. Tosh, I'm your host, Jake Edmonds. That's Tosh Mackintosh. How was your Holy War day on Saturday and how was your weekend?
It was incredible. What a great time to be alive. I mean, I'm still just on cloud nine from how awesome this weekend was.
3 in a row. Never thought that would be possible. I think it's the first time since the early 90s BYU went 3-0 against Utah. It's a long way till 9, right? We got to win 9 in a row to keep pace at least.
It's been 7 years since they beat us, though.
Totally.
So, we're getting close.
They won 9 in a row over 11 years, so, we're getting to that point. It's funny that and I think Spencer put this stat out, or BYU Sports Nation put the stat out. BYU's actually pretty, their records are pretty even, right? When BYU's not in a different conference or not independent, right? When BYU and Utah are in the same conference, they are historically, they've been very close. They've been very even. And Utah fans obviously will point out, well, that's cherry picking stats. And sure, it probably is, but it's a relevant, I think it's a relevant cherry pick because it illustrates that Utah had this massive advantage being in a conference. And this was even before NIL, right? I think NIL also levels the playing field a little bit. But being in the same conference levels it out just as much, I think.
For sure. And if we want to cherry pick some stats even more, since 1972, if BYU and Utah are in the same conference, BYU is 28-13. Mm-hmm. So in the modern era, if we're in the same conference, it really hasn't been very close. There's a lot of momentum for BYU and a lot of reasons to be excited about how the rivalry will continue to unfold over the next while.
Yeah. By the way, this episode is sponsored by Truewear Services and the Cougar Board merch store. Let's go through the drops this week. I think some of these are pretty sweet. So we've got the Y corduroy hat. I love this Y, by the way. If you're not watching, go head over to YouTube and check this out. Or just go to the Cougar Board merch store. But it's a Y with a massive black drop shadow on it. The corduroy hat.
One of the cooler hats they've put out.
I'm not a fan of corduroy, but I love this logo.
Yeah.
Very nice logo.
I am a fan of corduroy.
It looks
nice.
That's yours. Then we've got the Brigham Young classic hoodie. This one's just kind of a standard gray hoodie with your kind of cursive Brigham Young in the front.
And then we have here a crew neck, long sleeve. We've got the nice beat digger Cougar on the front. The Sailor Cougar on the back with Brigham Young, and then the Rise and Shout, the Cougars are out. It goes into some of the fight song. Kind of a fun shirt here. So again, week after week, Truewear and Cougar Board merch is coming out with some really good stuff that is worth checking out and buying.
Yep. All right, so head over to the merch store, check those out, and maybe purchase them. My dad saw one of the drop items that I was wearing yesterday, and he was telling his wife, my mom, go buy me that polo. I really want it. It was the beehive. What is it called? Not beehive, but the honeycomb pattern.
Yeah.
Polo shirt with the Sailor Cougar on it.
Last week I started my week in Hawaii and I lost my putter cover. And so for a second I was upset, and then I thought, you know what? I like that one that's on Cougar Board merch, and I've been wanting to buy it. I couldn't justify it when I already have a perfectly good one, but I got online, bought it. It was there when I got home, so now I've upgraded my putter cover. So there's good stuff on there.
All right, let's talk about the game. Man, and it's crazy that how close these games have been. And obviously Utah won 9 in a row over that time span. BYU actually statistically played better games in more than 9 of those games. Right? They should have statistically won 4 or 5 of those 9 games, just looking at yardage, first downs, turnovers, but they didn't. And so to return the favor in a game where Utah outgained BYU by close to 100 yards, obviously more first downs. I think the only statistic they lost in this game was the turnover margin, right? 2-0.
Yeah.
And then obviously there are 4 turnovers on downs, and we'll talk about those. And Kyle's just unwillingness to use his kicker, which is surprising for him because he, typically trusts his kicker, and they've had solid kickers in the past. We'll talk about that. But to be able to kind of return the favor and win a game where statistically Utah was the better team in that game was seemed very fitting for this rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, it really came down to who would get stops or make big plays in key moments, and BYU really outplayed Utah in the crucial moments.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those moments because I think those were the turning points. So I think when you look holistically at this game, Kyle's unwillingness to kick a field goal did him in, right? It did Utah in, and specifically BYU's 4 fourth down stops.
Yeah.
The first one being Mo Bamba just coming out from nowhere.
Yeah.
To take down
against their speedy guy. Mm-hmm. That same guy that ended up breaking that long touchdown where he looked just incredibly fast. I mean, that was 13 that actually was involved in a lot of the key plays that BYU came up big. One of which is. So to me, Mo Bamba looked like he was shot out of a rocket, and then even more so when I realized that number 13 is legit fast, and Mo Bamba just tracked him down and got him down in the backfield.
Yeah, and then the other one where Jack Kelly stuffed Devin Dampier, I think they were 3 yards out or whatever, and Kelly just stood in the hole in the gap and didn't allow Dampier to fall forward because he got almost there, right? He was there, and then Jack Kelly just stonewalled him. Right before the line to gain to stop him on 4th down again. But again, that's 6 points right there that Kyle left on the board. I think he left a total of 9 on the board in a 3-point game, right? And that is what decides the game. Now you can say, and I actually don't necessarily buy into the fact that, that's 9 points, and so Utah would have won by 6 because obviously BYU is making different decisions. After that point, if Utah kicks a field goal there, BYU is maybe not as conservative going into the half, which. Again, I think BYU, I think Kalani, in general, BYU had a really good game. I think Kalani's decision to be super conservative before the half almost did him in. And then the weird attempt on 4th and 7 at the end of the game. What are they? I think
there was head-scratching coaching decisions on both sides.
Absolutely.
No doubt. When it comes to the Utah one, was it really him trying to be aggressive, or was it that he didn't trust the kicker? Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is because if you remember on their second 4th down, they brought out the field goal unit. And then as they were about to snap, Kalani calls timeout. The kicker didn't realize it and kicked and missed.
Way off, too.
Yeah.
He was like a mile to the right.
And then the Utes decide, hey, we're pulling him. I think that they were already iffy on their kicker. And then they saw him in a situation he thought was live, miss one. And they're like, we can't trust this guy. He's missing in practice. He's missing in this game. That's my hypothesis because it just seemed real strange that there was some moments that the game was obvious that these points are going to be hard to come by. Kick the dang football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I tend to lean towards. I know there's analytics that say you go for it on 4th and less than 3 when you're in this part of the field. If you're in field goal range and it's early, like first half, and it's a game where it's likely, historically it's come down to a possession. Mm-hmm. 19 out of 24, 20 out of 25 times now in the last 25 games, something like that, has been decided by a score, by a touchdown or less, right? You need points. You got to manufacture points. And so I thought because BYU did the same thing, right? They I believe, I'm trying to even remember where in the game, but I think BYU passed up the opportunity to kick a field goal. I can't remember if they converted or not.
We ended up kicking it on that time. It was right before the half. It was like you alluded to it where
that's right.
We ran the ball.
Yeah.
We ran the ball multiple times and we're really wasting clock.
It converted though.
It seemed like, hey, we're going to kick it.
Yeah.
And then it was 4th and short, and we go for it.
With a minute left.
And then, though, we don't have any timeouts because we had to use the timeout on the 4th and short. Mm-hmm. And then, so we ended up just kicking a field goal anyway. The only method to the madness, though, is we did literally give Utah
0.
No chance to score. And maybe that was heavy on their minds of let's take every ounce of this out because Utah gets the ball at half.
Yes. And that's right. So I remember now. And I remember thinking, we need to kick the field goal. Like, we've already put ourselves in this situation. Like, it is what it is. Let's kick the field goal and give it to and let our defense stop them. So even in that moment, I thought they need to kick the field goal. and they went for it and they converted, and obviously the rest is history, and they ran the clock down. I still think that that at that point, like, go for the end zone, right? You have opportunities, you have shots to go for the end zone. You're already in Will Ferrell's range. And so taking shots at the end zone is not going to hurt you. Just don't throw an interception.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, that's like, once they converted on fourth down there, that's what I would have done. I would have been aggressive.
Yeah.
And they went the opposite. They were like, oh, we're just going to kick a field goal anyway. And the reason we went for it on fourth down was to actually just run the clock down and not give Utah a chance. Like, I felt like that's what they were going for when they went for it on fourth down, when they should have just taken shots at the end zone. But that's fine. I mean, that's, as you mentioned, like, I think both teams made kind of these interesting coaching decisions, and Kyle's ended up hurting them more than Kalani's. But I do want to talk about the biggest play of the game, which was Bear's touchdown run on 3rd and 10. And we've talked about Bear, I feel like, every week, and every week he seems to have these like, I'm not going to call them Heisman moments, but these plays that like all-star players make. In
big moments, that guy is clutch.
He's unfazed.
He whips out his best stuff when all the pressure is on, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's really played out exactly how we wanted it to, where we trotted out a freshman quarterback, but we're like, we need to bring him along slowly so when the big games come, he's no longer playing or acting like a freshman, and that has worked out perfectly how we needed it to.
By the way, shout out to Jackson Benny, man. Holy cow, what a I mean, I think he actually had a highly rated game, safety for Utah. But he was the guy that was hurdled earlier in the game.
So number 23.
Dragged 5 yards into the end zone, and then he also is the guy that had the interception that was overturned because of the holding, defensive holding penalty.
Yeah.
So this guy was like involved in, like, 3 of BYU's most impactful plays of that game. So shout out to Jackson Benny. He's actually a really great player. He plays both ways, right? Like, I don't know if anyone listening to this podcast actually follows Utah, but I sit next to a Utah fan, and so we talk all the time. And Jackson Benny, similar to Smith Snowden, similar to Lander Barton, who we'll talk about in a little bit. These guys are impact players, and they play both sides of the ball, and obviously they have a huge impact on their team, but yeah, for Jackson Benny to be involved in those 3 plays, he will be forever enshrined in BYU lore because of those 3 plays of this game. That touchdown run by Bear, to me, lives up to this, is going to live up to the same reputation, the same hype as Beck to Harline. Like, Beck to Harline, the Collie on Austin Collie catch on 4th and 18, the throw over the middle to Andrew George.
This one's going to be the Bear is loose in Provo.
Like, exactly. And I'm thinking, it finds was it James Bates for the mountain? I forget his name. Finds his guy, Beck to Harline finds his guy, touchdown. Yeah. What does he say about the Hall to Collie play? I forget.
On the 4th
but you just 15, think of these calls in your head, the 4th and 18.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of lives in your memory, right? Is the call. And there's a Bear on the loose in Provo will forever live in my head when I think of that play. Some other big plays, and obviously that put BYU up 10. But to put BYU into that position, they had to get a stop, right? And the Tanner Wall interception was a phenomenal stop. I loved what Tanner said after the game. I don't know if you heard his interview with Spencer Lindsay.
Yeah, I did actually.
I think it was Spencer. It was BYU Sports Nation. What he said about Utah's offense. And I actually, this is kind of, we alluded to this a little bit kind of coming into this game, which was Utah's offense is very reliant on Devin Dampier as a runner and not as a passer. Because, he's very efficient, right? He's like 74% passer, but they're very short, slants and flats and screens, very, very much less than 5-10 yards downfield. And when he starts having to throw downfield, that's when he makes his mistakes. Yeah, and that's what we saw play out.
You're talking about Tanner Wall said that Utah's route scheme is very basic.
Yes.
And that they knew he's not that great of a passer downfield, and that played out because at that point of the game, it was BYU takes the lead, Utah takes the lead. BYU takes the lead. We'd go up 3, they go up 4. And we needed a freaking stop. And for him, it was a pretty well-thrown ball. And even Devin Dampier, when asked about it after the game, he said, it was 3rd and long. I want to give my guy a chance. And so I took a risk, and their player made a better play than ours. And that is exactly what happened. It was a well-thrown ball, a little bit lofted, but Tanner just was skied in the air early and just hung there like Michael Jordan and caught that thing in a beautiful, beautiful way because number 13 tries to jump, but he's got Tanner already there, and it was just amazing. Me and my son have been arguing back and forth of what was the most crucial play of the game. To me, it's that one. That setting, that moment needed to stop. My son talked about another one you have down, that Utah muffed punt. He really argues that is the key play of the game. What do you think was the most crucial, key play of the game to turn things?
I mean, if I'm going to rank them, I'm going to say Bears touchdown run is number one because where they are on the field, right? They could kick a field goal. It's 3rd and 10. If they don't convert, they're probably kicking a field goal to go up 6. Not ideal, right? You don't want it to be a one-score game. And as we saw play out, Utah marched down the field and scored a touchdown, right? So if they kick a field goal, they're in trouble. And on 3rd and 10, to me, a quarterback draw is almost like, hey, let's see what happens. If it's 4th and short, maybe we'll go for it. But otherwise, we're just kind of getting closer to field goal range. To me, that's that type of play. And offensive coordinators call that all the time. I think fans get upset when they're like, oh, that's a throwaway play. But that's a safe play. And for Bear to turn that into what was arguably, in my opinion, the best play of that game and the most impactful play of that game was phenomenal by him. But I rank that number one. I rank Tanner Wall's interception number 2. The Satawala pass breakup was obviously an impactful play, but I think it was more of just it's a message, right? Yeah. It happened literally right in front of Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah.
It was completely clean and legal, as much as some Utah fans, not most.
Well, their first reaction is our guy just got blown up.
He's dead.
And
he's dead on the sideline.
That has to be illegal. But you watch it again, and it was a clean hit.
And it was very impactful too, right? It came at a point in the game where Utah's obviously trying to come back and score. And it would have been a first down. I think it resulted. I think the next play, or maybe a few plays later, if I'm thinking of the same drive, Kelly had that sack to essentially seal the game. I didn't even put that in here as an impactful play, but that was just as impactful as most other defensive plays was that sack by Kelly. The muff punt was impactful just because obviously it came early in the game, so it wasn't as impactful in terms of the overall outcome of the game. But in that moment. BYU's punting, it was late in the second half, right? Utah could get the ball with over 2 minutes to go. They got plenty of time to drive down the field and score before the half. And remember, they get the ball coming out of halftime. So if they score before the half, come out of halftime, score again, you've got a completely different ball game. And so for him to muff that punt, now granted, BYU didn't do a whole lot. Sam Vanderhaar actually made a mistake in punting it shorter than he normally does. And I think Carvalho, who's the punt returner, Carvalho even said after the game, or Kyle told the media after the game that Carvalho went to Kyle after the play, and he said the ball just dove on me, it just died in the air and dove. And the argument is then let it bounce, right? Don't go for it and don't let it bounce off your chest into the BYU ensuing coverage. But that's what happened. And not only did it not turn into points for Utah, but I think BYU went down the field and then kicked the field goal, I believe, to go up.
No, that's when we kicked the field goal. Yeah. And
go up 10-7.
And it really, because if Utah has that ball with 3 minutes left with momentum, if they score and they're getting it out of half, in that game that was a defensive battle to that point, it felt monumental. Yeah. And so huge.
Cougar fans, it's time to rise and roar. Introducing the True Blue Roar Collection, a new drop made for fans who bleed blue. Featuring the Rise and Roar Meridian crewneck, the Brigham Young Classic hoodie, and the Y corduroy hat. This lineup is all about timeless comfort and Cougar tradition. From tailgates to the stands, stay warm, look sharp, and show your True Blue pride. Shop the True Blue Roar Collection today at store.cougarboard.com because Cougar spirit never fades. Cougar fans, nothing fuels game day like championship-level barbecue. At R&R Barbecue, we smoke our meats low and slow, serve up crave-worthy slides, and keep the good times rolling. Whether you're tailgating, celebrating a win, or just hungry for real barbecue, R&R's got you covered. R&R Barbecue, rooted in flavor, raised in smoke. I wanted to shout out, too, because we kind of breezed over the Satawala pass breakup. Obviously, we talked about Tanner Wall. Our safeties, man, BYU safeties were, we're going to talk about, Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker every week, right? That is the anchor of BYU's defense. Tanner Wall and Falata Satawala were the unsung heroes of that game. And not just because those two plays, but they made in fact, PFF, I believe those two were PFF's highest rated players on defense. In fact, on the whole team that week.
If I have to give a player of the game, the best player on either side, it was Satuala. And it's so beautiful, and it also shows the directions of the program. He was the number 1 rated guy out of Utah 2 years ago, Bountiful High, played incredibly on both sides of the ball. Typically, a guy from Bountiful, that's closer to Salt Lake, defensive player, those guys were going to Utah. And he went to BYU. And here we are 2 years later, and he was all over the field. And he just looks like a bigger, stronger, faster athlete, especially at safety. He looks huge at safety. And he led the team in tackles. He was all over the field with pass breakups. He actually also was in the backfield a lot and should have had more tackles, but even some of his missed tackles, he really delayed the play and then let BYU help come. So he's my number 1. To your point, our safeties, our second leading tackler was Tanner Wall, who also had that huge interception. Our safeties balled out, where our linebackers had a solid game, but our safeties really stole the show on defense, and it was fun to see.
Yeah, 12 tackles for Faletau, 8 solo, 1 TFL, 1 pass breakup, obviously that massive hit, and then 1 forced fumble. Do you remember the fumble?
Yeah, when he stripped
20 more yards.
Yeah, that was the flukiest, luckiest thing.
Oh my
if we
gosh.
would have lost that game, that would have been one that would have hurt.
And again, like, it goes back to, like, you know, Utah and fans in general saying the BYU is just lucky. Like, they just get all the lucky plays, and like for Utah to have these lucky plays and still lose.
Yes.
You know, very, very kind of fitting. I want to take a step back here because there were a lot of Utah fans that were incredibly confident coming into this game, and I kept some receipts because it's kind of just illustrative of the way the tide is turning. How Utah went into these games, and it wasn't just fans. Utah went into these games, and I think it was Guy Holiday that tweeted about this after the game. He said, when I was at BYU, BYU fans or players and coaches, they thought that they could win the Utah game. They went into it thinking, like, we've got a chance to win this game. Utah coaches and players went into it knowing they would win the game. It's a mentality thing. And Guy Holiday's kind of dramatic, and so I don't know if that's reality or if that's probably the more of like a culture thing. The mentality going into the game is that Utah expected to win that game and BYU thought they could. And I think that reflected among their fans, and that's not a bad thing, right? But I think a lot of fans got so confident, and as we saw on social media the week leading up to and weeks leading up to this game, they were talking, and I get it, like it's a rivalry game. There's going to be a lot of smack talk, but of course, as BYU fans, we're going to have receipts. So at Not Cam Rising says, how many INTs is Bear going to throw on Saturday? 1, 2, or 3? Dampier is going to be busy rushing on your defense. And obviously this is part of a thread, so he's replying to somebody. And the response that he got is from Bachmeier for Heisman says, right, because he's a running back, right? So why are you talking about him rushing on your defense, guys? Like, he's your running back. And Not Cam Rising responds with, what happens when Martin can't rush for 100 yards?
Yeah.
You guys going to rely on your quarterback to pick up his slack. So not only does Bear not throw an interception, a single one, LJ rushes for over 100 yards in the game, and obviously we know what the outcome of the game was. Wayshawn Parker, let's keep some receipts from Wayshawn Parker, the guy that had, 30-something yards in this game. In response to Utah CFB stats, he says, Utah CFB stats said, interesting, Wayshawn Parker was the number 4 quarterback in the running back in the portal this offseason and was ranked above all 6 of these, and he's ranking running backs that are in this ranking, this week to week CFB ranking. Anyway, that doesn't matter. What matters is the response. So Wayshawn Parker says, I'm going to kill them this year, meaning I'm going to kill those 6 running backs that were ranked ahead of me.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he is not killing those running backs. And as BYU has shown, they were able to keep him well in check in this game. I think he had 8 carries for 30-something yards.
Yeah. And LJ had himself a game. Multiple weeks in a row where he finds a way to find those seams and get lot of 10 to 15 yard rushes, and those it's really, really hard. So, yeah, they had so much confidence too. The one I would add too is in their O-line. And they played with an extra O-lineman for most of the game.
Yeah.
And we had 3 sacks. We had more quarterback hurries than they had in this season previous to this game. Like, I don't know what it is, but you could see that, like, grin, that smirk in Jay Hill's interviews this week. He saw something, and you saw it with our ability to get pressure, our ability for our safeties to, like, seem like they knew where the play was going. I loved it. I can't say enough. Freaking loved it.
Yeah, they definitely made Devin seem more human, right? Like, we've seen Devin, and I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago. I said Utah's got a pretty explosive offense, if not one of the most explosive offenses in the conference. And right now, I think they're the top offense in terms of total yards, still in the conference. And obviously, they outgained BYU in total yardage, but they're not incredibly. I don't know if efficiency is the right word, because obviously they're very efficient on third down, but Devin Dampier is not this, like, GOAT Heisman candidate quarterback that people he's Caden Salter on steroids a little bit. Like, Caden Salter is more of like
he's a stockier Caden Salter.
He's a running quarterback that can throw the ball, but not incredibly well.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, Bear, when you compare Bear to Devin Dampier, Bear as a freshman is a different type of runner, but he's a running quarterback, and I think he's probably a better running quarterback. And he's obviously, in my opinion, he's a smarter and more versatile passer.
Yeah.
Now, they're not using him as much because he is still a freshman. And why use him as a passer? Because you've got LJ Martin to run the ball. You've got Bear that can also run the ball. But when Bear needs to throw the ball, he puts pretty decent zip on it. He's accurate most of the time. Whereas Devin Dampier couldn't throw a back shoulder fade to save his life in that game.
Yeah.
Like, crazy off. And Bear was too, right? Remember when Bear was throwing back shoulder fades in the first 2 games of the season? And I was like, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because these are not working. And I think he stopped, right?
Yeah.
And Dampier in that game against BYU was throwing back shoulder fades. He was throwing basically jump balls to his receivers. He wasn't throwing his receivers open in single coverage, right? He wasn't finding receivers cutting across the middle in single coverage because they weren't running those routes.
Yeah.
They have to almost dumb down this offense for Devin Dampier so that he's throwing back shoulders and he's throwing to single coverage to the post, to the sticks, right? The offense is tailored, and credit Jason Beck for making this offense work so far throughout through the season, minus the Texas Tech game, minus the BYU game. But he's basically had to cater this offense to Devin Dampier to fit his skill set, which is not incredibly impressive.
Absolutely agree. And that leads me to some of the, like, excitement on the BYU side and the downness on the Utah side right now is not only the outcome of that game, but if you read the tea leaves of what's the next few years. Bear's a freshman. Mm-hmm. He's going to get better. LJ's going to get better. Our defensive players that, like, our number 11, Satuala, he's a sophomore. Mm-hmm. Like, we've got young talent. Our DNs, Clegg had a good game. Akana had a good game. These guys are freshmen. The momentum is there. On the Utah side, their O-line, their main guys are going to go to the NFL. Their main guys on defense are going to go to the NFL. Dampier's not going to be better next year. He's going to be the same guy. BYU's stock is rising. Utah, if you have to ask an honest Utah fan, is Utah going to win more games next year or this year? They're going to say this year. And then you add NIL. You add that Kyle can't steal signs anymore. And all of a sudden,
that got some run this week.
Things are going different directions.
Oh man, that got picked up again. I know you retweeted it.
Oh
this week.
I thought I knew what I was getting into with that take earlier, but with all the comments Utah fans said, I thought, let's retweet this and see what they're saying now. It's been crickets.
But you're not wrong. The trajectory. I mean, at least in terms of trajectory, there's no denying that 3 in a row is better than 0 in a row. Like BYU is obviously winning these games now, and that's not to say that BYU is going to go to not going to go to Rice Eccles next year and lose. Like we don't know. Like they're still like pretty even teams in terms of talent level, even though the trajectory is a little bit different right now. But right now, Kalani definitely has Kyle's number, and that kind of leads us to the next question: like, does Kyle stay another year? Because I think he stayed after last season. And he'll tell you that it's because of their overall record. But I think, too, part of that is you lose to BYU and you don't want to leave. You don't want to retire after having lost. Lavelle didn't, right? Lavelle's last game against Utah was a win.
Yeah.
And Kalani was a part of that. And so you don't want to leave your legacy with a 3-game losing streak to your rival. And so does that actually factor into Kyle's decision to potentially stay next year?
I hope so.
Do you? You hope Kyle stays?
Yes. Kyle Whittingham, I will give him credit. BYU should have found a way to hire him back in the day.
05.
Like, Kyle is a fantastic coach, but he's a fantastic development coach, and he's a no-nonsense guy. In the current era, part of it is his age, but part of it is that he's not a player's coach. And so with transfers, and then you factor in he doesn't like playing the schmooze, the donors game. So an NIL, you add up all of those things, and I put him very much in the same bucket of Dabo, of the Oklahoma State guy that I'm forgetting his name, but I'm a man. I'm 40.
Mike Gundy.
I'm
a man.
Kyle's in that same thing. They were great in the past era, but this era switched quickly. And all of a sudden, he is not cut out for this new era. I hope they hang on to him as long as possible because I really think that he's coaching in a foregone era, and it just doesn't have the same results anymore.
Do you think it's kind of sowing this discord between Utah and Morgan Scalley? The longer they wait, because Morgan knows he's coaching waiting, and it's funny that like at the time, I think Utah fans were celebrating, and maybe they still are, that hey, we've got our guy, we've got our heir apparent locked up, and he's not going anywhere. But at this point, it's like, is there concern now that kind of the milk is souring?
Absolutely, he's got to be hating it. One is because he's a competitor, he wants to be the head coach, but secondly, as they have these mediocre years, as they keep losing to BYU, which everyone in the state cares a lot about, his shine is off a little bit. And if this goes another year or two, are fans going to say, no, like the right move is someone in-house? No. They're going to want something different that's going to clean house. He's got to be hating what's happening.
Yeah. And you juxtapose kind of Utah's coaching situation with BYU's, and I think a lot of people were pointing at the post-game press conferences, obviously the week leading up to it, Kyle refusing to talk about Bear Bachmeier for whatever reason. Like, I don't know what Kyle's deal is. And Kalani made it very clear after the game, like, hey, Kyle is a great father. He's a great person. He's my mentor. I think he spent 5 minutes talking about how BYU fans should not judge Kyle based on his competitive nature.
Which was funny to me because reading between the lines, how I read that is Kalani, he loves Kyle legitimately, but he's also said between the lines, I know Kyle comes across as a big-time jerk, but give him some grace because he's really competitive.
Love it.
And that's what I heard. And then Kyle got up in his press conference and just lived into that.
Yes.
Could not say anything nice, was saying that Barton's thing was questionable, was not giving any credit to the 3 wins. He was just being this big time jerk, but I do think it's true that a lot of it's driven by his competitiveness, but Kalani's just as competitive. But Kalani is able to put that competitiveness behind what he knows he should say, and Kyle has never had the ability to do that.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I wouldn't go so far as to say Kyle's a jerk. I actually I don't know Kyle personally. I went to school with his daughter. And obviously, I worked in local media for 5 years, and so I know Kyle at least from a professional, maybe at a distance standpoint. I think Kyle's a good person, generally a good person, right? Great family man, all that. As a competitor, and to your point, like Kalani's acknowledging this, right? He knows that Kyle as a competitor is petty, right? He's condescending. He's kind of arrogant. And I think it's fair for fans who see him very much only as a competitor to judge him as a competitor.
Yeah.
And he's very much all of those things. And so for Kalani, I get it. Kalani's a better person than 99% of the world.
Absolutely.
Right? And he's a better person than me. And I wish I was Kalani. I'm not, right? I'm not going to call Kyle a jerk. I don't think he's a jerk. I think he's competitive. He will do whatever it takes to give his team a competitive advantage. And he takes this kind of Urban Meyer approach where disrespecting your opponent is part of the game. Right. And it's part of giving yourself a competitive advantage, putting urinal cakes with a BYU logo in your team's bathrooms. Like that's for whatever reason that gives your team a mindset of like, we're not going to respect these guys. We're going to beat the hell out of them. But sorry, the heck. Let's edit that.
You're bringing it this show.
I actually don't know if I can say that or not. Can I say that?
I don't know why. On a podcast, of course you can. It's your show. If you decide that that's what you want to say.
Hopefully we don't want to. Yeah. Anyway, but that's like the mentality that Kyle kind of was mentored in with Urban Meyer, and so you just juxtapose that with Kalani. I'm grateful that we have Kalani as a coach because Kalani comes from a place of respect, a place of like literally like loving everyone, right? And it's not just like he's just saying it. He literally loves everyone. His players, his coaches, his opponents.
I've been in, and as of you, we've both been in like smaller group settings or one-on-one settings with Kalani, and he's that same dude always.
Yeah.
Like I've been sitting next to him at a bench watching our kids practice, and I bring up Utah and just trying to see, hey, can I get him to say something? He never will. Mm-hmm. Like in a small group setting, I again have asked him, hey, Kyle won't even mention BYU. Like, how does it feel to beat him the last 2 times? And I mean, 99% of people would say it feels freaking great, but he won't do it. He'll be, I love Kyle. And he just goes, he always.
Kalani.
No, Kalani will say he loves Kyle.
Oh, yes. I thought you were saying that. I was like,
he never takes off this just gracious person. He just is that to his core, and I respect that.
Yeah. But it is interesting to kind of juxtapose those. And as you mentioned, Kyle, after the game, when he was asked, like, hey, does losing a third straight affect your decision? I don't know if it was Gordon Monson that asked the question, but does it affect your decision to come back next year or not, right? And Kyle was like, nah, we won 9 straight before that, so we're still very much on the plus side of that ledger. And it's like, that's – I mean, I guess
not the question.
I guess you answered the question, but there's still 3 in a row. Like acknowledge the 3 in a row. But whatever, he doesn't have to. But to me, it was more about Kyle refusing to talk about Bear Bachmeier. Literally the week after he gave credit to Sam Levitt. Obviously, this is when Sam Levitt was expected to play in the game. To Jordan Tyson, like he was giving credit and talking about players.
Oh, he's
on
different.
The opponent's
if you remember
teams.
when Colorado beat him last year, Colorado's the best team we've seen by far. Like it's not impossible for him to give praise to a team that just beat him, but he will never do that for BYU.
Absolutely. And that's in his nature. That's a very much a coaching style of his time. Cougar alumni know what it means to rise and shout, and that's exactly what True Wear Services helps your business do. They specialize in merch production, swag, uniforms, custom printing and design, plus web stores and fulfillment. So repping your company, team, or school is seamless. You've built the brand, now it's time to showcase it. Partner with True Wear Services today and give your organization the same pride and polish you showed in Cougar Blue. Go to truewearservices.com/cougarboard to get started. This episode is brought to you by Aptiv Pest Control. Aptiv believes that every home should be enjoyed. They tailor their pest control treatment plans to target pests when and where they're most active. Plus, if you see pest activity between treatments, Aptiv will return to take care of the problem at no additional cost. It's their way of making sure every customer is satisfied and every pest is controlled. If pests stay away, Aptiv is why. Visit AptivPestControl.com/loyalcougars or call 844-966-4787. Mention this promotion to get your initial treatment for just $29. That's AptivPestControl.com/loyalcougars or call 844-966-4787. Get home field advantage with Aptiv. Let's move on now because the slate doesn't really get much easier for BYU, right? I think it actually potentially gets harder. Utah at home was very much up in the air. I think Utah, by the time the tip-off or the kickoff happened, they were like a 5.5 point favorite.
Yes.
It went from like 3.5 to 5.5 when kickoff happened. Iowa State is also favored. Now they are at home. And I tend to, and I've said this before, I tend to be very hesitant picking BYU in away games. And we've seen how they've played at Arizona. We've seen how they played at Colorado. I don't think Iowa State is as good as we originally thought, right? This was supposed to be a gauntlet, right?
Yeah, they're 2-2 in conference.
These 3 games, 4 games, 5 games, if you want to include TCU, Cincinnati, kind of a gauntlet. But they are not. Iowa State has turned out to not be this top 3 team, top 4 team in the conference. I think they're very much middle of the pack.
Yeah, I mean their key wins were they beat Kansas State in Ireland,
which isn't
Kansas State's not good.
No.
They did beat Iowa, and Iowa I think is a decent team. They're not great, but they beat a decent Big Ten team. But what gives me hope is ISU seems down. They've lost 2 since conference play has started. They're down both their cornerbacks. They are absolutely beatable. What scares me is that if you look at historically, BYU and Utah for that matter, often tend to lose games right after this rivalry game. Last year, we lost the next 2 games right after we beat Utah.
Yeah, don't remind me.
And the other thing is this is a day game. Starts in the light, ends in the light, 2:30. And that is not historically what BYU has been great at lately. You know, like we became the vampire Cougs, the nighttime Cougs.
They are better at night.
Yeah.
It's statistically better at night.
There's multiple things that give me a little bit of pause. And yeah, we're going to be in this world right now. Week after week, man, we got another tough game, and we're in it right now.
So just looking back at their games, they beat Arkansas State by 8. Not impressive, right? They did destroy Arizona at home. And again, I think they're a better team at home. And I think in general, right, we know that teams play better at home. Mm-hmm. They lost at Cincinnati by 8, scored 30 points against Cincinnati. I don't think Cincinnati's defense is very great. I think their offense is probably the best in the conference. One of the best in the we have talked about Utah being probably the best, but Cincinnati's one of the best in the conference. They then go to Boulder and lose. They lost to Colorado, right, this last week. So they are very winnable. Let's look at them by the numbers, though, real quick. So they're in conference. They are 12th in scoring offense, which is surprising, right? We thought Iowa State would have a pretty decent scoring. Rocco Beck, I thought, was meant to be top 3 quarterback in the conference, and he's not. He's just not there. They are 6th in scoring defense, so kind of middle of the pack there. Maybe a little above average. They're 10th in total offense, 8th in total defense, 9th rushing the ball, 3rd in stopping the run. They are 7th passing the ball, 6th in stopping the pass. They're terrible, 14th in the conference in sacks. They don't force a lot of fumbles. They don't commit a lot of penalties on offense, and I think part of that is because of their leadership, their quarterback. They are 16th in red zone percentage.
There's 16 teams in the conference, right?
Yeah, they're dead last in scoring the ball when they get into the red zone. So they're not incredibly efficient in the red zone, and their defense allows a lot of success in the red zone. And so, and we talked about Rocco Beck, 63% passer, 1,600 yards this year, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. One of the worst. He's 11th in the Big 12 in efficiency, quarterback efficiency. And again, this is a guy that we thought going into the year, we thought Sawyer Robinson, right, would be, among the best, and he's terrible, right? He hasn't been that good this year for Baylor. Rocco Beck to me was like top 2 or 3. Avery Johnson was up there. It's funny, these guys that we thought would be really, really impactful in the conference have not been that good. It's been like Baron Morton, right? Baron Morton for Texas Tech. It's been Devin Dampier, right, for Utah as a runner at least. As far as impactful players, Bear Bachmeier obviously has been in his own way impactful for BYU. Rocco Beck has just not been there, and I think the offense relies so much on him to be that guy that when he struggles, they struggle. And that's kind of what we've seen with Iowa State this year.
Yeah, and so this is a game that I think BYU wins if it starts with mentality. If we use, again, it's been worked really well for BYU last year and this year, that we feel disrespected, that again, we're underdogs. Like, what do we got to do to be the favorite in the game? But again, I like it. I think that this makes, we play well as the betting underdog. Second is if we will get our mind right coming off this big win. I thought that they were saying the right things right after the game. That, hey, we can't have this let down like we did last year. We got a good team coming up. I also think that the fact that we were so close last year and let it slip, I think better prepares us mentally to not do that again. That I don't think that they're satisfied with where we're at this year, and that we will come into this game in a better spot. We need to run the ball, which we shall. If we're able to pass against their secondary that is literally their second-string secondary, that I think that if we will be put up a lot of points if we can pass, because we'll also be able to run the ball.
So is that your key to win? So BYU wins if, and then BYU loses if.
BYU wins if we're able to pass the ball down the field.
Okay. That's interesting because I think that BYU's advantage that they didn't really have. Now, LJ was fine last year, but he was injured, right? But I think the advantage that they have this year that they didn't have last year is a running attack, like a consistent running attack. They really haven't had a game where they've been stopped running the ball. It hasn't been explosive in most cases, right? Like they're LJ's getting his 110, 115 yards per game. And it's pretty consistent. I think his longest carry on Saturday was 17 yards. So he's not like busting, 30. Now he has in the past, right? I think he did against Arizona, but 30 plus yard run. But that's not common, and he's getting his yards, in these kind of 4, 5, 6 yard increments. I think that's how BYU wins. It's going to come down to them in the trenches, and I love that too because they've done so well in the trenches. I was actually skeptical going into the Utah game that BYU is going to be able to own or dominate the trenches. I don't think they dominated, but they definitely held their own against an NFL caliber offensive line and defensive line. John Henry Daly is a menace, right?
Yeah,
and he got a sack early in the game, and I think he was pretty well kept in check.
Logan Fano had 0 sacks.
Yeah. So BYU's offensive line, I think, has been able to hold its own against some of the best. Their defensive line, they're not getting a ton of pressure, but I don't want to go back to the Utah game too much, but I don't think that was really the intent of the game. It was to contain Devin Dampier, and I thought they did a really good job of that. And then it's their linebackers, right, that get the pressure. There's these kind of exotic blitzes that's going to get pressure on the quarterback. And I think that's probably there's room for improvement there, but I am confident and kind of more comfortable in the defensive line's ability to at least contain the quarterback. Now, Rocco Beck, it's funny, like we've gone how many weeks in a row now without a true pocket passing quarterback. This is kind of their first real, and we say Rocco Beck is kind of middle of the pack. He's still an impressive passer in the pocket. And so this will be kind of a test of can BYU handle that type of quarterback when they've dealt with these elusive running mobile quarterbacks for the last 4 or 5 weeks. Caden Salter, Noah Fafita, Devin Dampier, Khalil Wilkins, right? 4 in a row. So can they handle that? I think BYU wins if, and this is kind of all boils down to this, BYU wins if I think they can control the trenches and run the ball.
Yeah.
And the passing game is going to come as a result of that, right? I think they will be able to pass if they can run the ball. It sets up play action. Bear Bachmeier is one of the best play action quarterbacks in the country, like top 3.
Yeah.
According to PFF. And so if they can set up the run and run play action and that sets up the pass, I think BYU loses if the opposite happens, right? I think if they cannot establish a run, because what happens is then the home team, the home crowd gets into it. If they get a couple 3 and outs, or if BYU can't run the ball, if they get stopped on 3rd and short or whatever, you're going to get the home crowd into it, and it's really hard to come back from that. Now, they've shown they've been able to do it against Colorado, right? They could come back down 14 against a pretty raucous away crowd, but can they do it in Ames? Can they do it against a team that's probably better than Colorado?
Yeah, it's going to be a test. This game is hugely important because we have a bye week right after this.
Yeah.
So we got to find a way just to scrap together emotions, health, get this to be a win, and then we have a bye week to kind of recoup mentally and physically before we get into a couple of other hard games. I think BYU is going to do it. In Jay Hill, I trust. And I think he's going to have a scheme that's going to slow them down enough. I think we're healthy enough on defense, like that we came out of that very physical game against Utah, more or less the same health that we went into it in. I think BYU wins 27-14.
So 14 would be the lowest offensive output. I'm just looking at their schedule. Their lowest offensive output of the season. Now, I wouldn't put that past BYU, right? I think that BYU is capable, but their lowest output so far this season at home was against Iowa, 16 points in a 16-13 win. I think it's going to be closer to maybe like 24-17, 28-17. I do think it's going to come down to a possession.
Yeah.
Maybe whoever has the ball last wins. But I do think that BYU can win and should win. It's again this kind of being on the road. They're coming off of a rivalry game. A lot can happen, but in terms of on paper, BYU should win this game and should win this game, fairly easily. I do think it's close though. I think it's going to be about a 24-28 to 17 win.
Love it.
All right, let's move on to basketball. We've got a few minutes, and I don't want to talk a whole lot about this because it's a scrimmage, and I think a lot of people are having a lot of angst and a lot of negative takeaways from a scrimmage. Yes, they lost. They lost to Nebraska on the road, and Nebraska is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, or at least projected to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't think any of that matters. Kevin Young, if you watched the game, I don't know if you watched it. It was actually on YouTube. If you want to go over YouTube, it's on YouTube right now. I watched it in 2x speed. And what I took away from that game is that Kevin Young did not care a lick about the score, about the final result. He literally had like his 11th and 12th guys on the floor in the last 2 minutes of the game, right? Mm-hmm. Guys that are not going to see the court all season unless it's garbage time. He had them in the end of that game when they were down 5 and could have come back and won it. So I'm not concerned about that. And in fact, my only true concerns, and we'll start with kind of the negatives because we're already there. My only real concerns were Richie Saunders did not look like himself. Did you watch it? Did you go back and watch it?
I did.
So, and what I mean by that is like he did 2 things really well. Well, 3 things. He did 3 things really well last year. Defense, right? He was a really good defender. And I think he was a fine defender in this game. I actually didn't watch a whole lot of his defense. I thought overall defensively they struggled in the perimeter, and that was another concern of mine. But Richie on offense he was airballing, right? He was like bricking 3-point shots, and then he wasn't really finishing that well at the rim. And I thought he got a little bit rattled early on, as rattled as you can be during a scrimmage game. But the refs really struggled. And this isn't like, oh, the refs were terrible, but like they had some really weird traveling calls on Richie where it just like it wasn't maybe in high school, like if you really want to like be super nitpicky about steps, but
I know
there
the
was
one
no
you're
travel.
talking about, and if anything, they should have called the foul on the bump. And if they're not going to call that, it was like a drive that they never call travel on.
There were two. It was on both sides of the floor. One must have been in the first half, the other must have been in the second half. But one was in on the baseline, and I just I'm looking at the play, and I'm like, I just don't even see where you would mistake it. Like he didn't stumble. There wasn't like maybe he gathered too early, like if it's gather step, right? Maybe he gathered it too. There wasn't anything. It was just there wasn't anything there. And the second one, he actually threw his arms up. It's like he's actually getting visibly frustrated. And Richie's not a guy that really does that, right? Like I think he was a little bit I don't know if rattled is the word, but it was affecting him and his ability to make plays, knowing that these officials are like looking at a completely different game. It felt like
I have the same take. I've framed it in my mind that if there's somebody that I need to get better or play to their potential this season, I'm glad it's Richie, because I still have incredible confidence that Richie's going to find a new equilibrium on this squad and be someone that is an impact player for us. I think though my takeaway before this game and definitely after is that it takes a while for you to have incredible players mesh. Mm-hmm. You look at Rutgers last year, had 2 top 5 draft picks. They didn't make the tournament. Like you can have great players and it doesn't mesh. I don't think that's going to happen to BYU. I think Kevin Young is too good of a coach. We have too many guys coming back from a great team last year. We have Richie Saunders, who is an unselfish individual, as one of our best players. We have AJ, who makes the right basketball play. We have Rob Wright, who's a passer. I think we will mesh, but it will take a little bit of time. My make me smile is AJ looked like the best player on the floor.
Yeah.
That he had 19 first half points, was rebounding, was assisting. He played absolutely great. I also, both good and bad, we're a different team when Rob Wright's on the floor. And then he didn't play the second half. And it's what I've gathered is that he does have like a nagging injury that he's on a minutes restriction with, and that may roll into the season.
Is that real, or is that speculation? Do you think that's why they held him out in the second half?
Yes.
Okay. You think, or like that?
Well, I don't have this
nagging
firsthand, but
okay.
I have someone who talks to the staff.
Okay.
That they said the staff told him that he's got a nagging injury.
So you're not implying that based on what you saw in the second half.
I'm not guessing. This is information I've been told.
That's concerning.
And so it is because I don't think that in the season he's going to not play a whole second half if he's healthy.
Yeah.
But they are going to limit him, and it is something that could flare up. And if I have to say our weak spot, it is depth at the point. AJ can kind of play it in spells. Baker, who's also injured, can play it in spells, but that's it. Like we really need Rob Wright, and we're a different team when Rob's on the floor.
Absolutely. You need a distributor. Every team does. AJ, 30 points, 19 points in the first half, played very limited minutes. Again, Kevin, and Nebraska's doing this too, right? They're just playing with lineups. Like, it's just basically a glorified practice. But for AJ to go 10 of 19, 2 of 3 from 3, I was a little bit concerned about his three-point shooting. And maybe he still may have some, slumps during the regular season. But 2 of 3 is impressive. 2 of 4 is impressive. 7 rebounds, 3 assists. And just as a defender, I think he had a couple blocks too. Looked really good. The other bright spots I thought, and Rob Wright looked really good in the first half, right? I thought he was a phenomenal distributor. He finished really well at the rim. I think he's a decent shooter, but he's at the end of the day, he's a distributor.
He was pesky on defense.
I don't really care.
Too.
I don't care how much of a good shooter he is, as long as he can get shooters the ball.
Yeah.
And I thought he did that really well. A little surprised with how well. Is it Hadim or Hadim? I've seen him.
Hadim.
It's Hadim Boop.
Yep.
Which I love. I love the name. But Hadim Boop, 12 points, 11 rebounds. I think he's going to be kind of our double machine. Look out, Kyle Collinsworth. I guess Kyle was a triple-double machine. But I think Hadim Boop is a kind of refreshingly active defender and good on offense. Like, we need a motor guy. He's a motor guy.
I came into this season really worried about if Keba Keita gets hurt, who is going to be able to play behind him. And Boop has showed me so far, and what I've gathered from hearing about practices is he's defending really well. He's a hustle guy. He has putbacks. We will be able to play a small ball lineup with him at the 5, and I think be really, really good. What I am worried about is I don't think we can play him and Keba at the same time.
Sure.
They both are too limited on their offensive range for that to work on offense.
Yeah, but I don't think that's a concern, right? I don't think they will. I think when Boop's in, they're going to have Bosco in, right? Or they'll have maybe a smaller lineup or whatever, and he'll play the 5, and Keita will be out.
Yep.
It's really going to be a matter of like who gets more playing time, Boop or Stanton. Because Stanton, I think is he's got potential. He's got the raw talent. I don't think he's got the size and physicality yet, but I think he'll get there. And Boop is there. I think Boop is there. He's got the motor. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism. And we saw that he can manufacture 12 points in a game where I don't think he even saw much playing time. So 12 points, 11 rebounds for Boop. So those are the highlights of the game. If I'm going to take away anything from this game, is that it's that BYU can really, when the starters are in, they can kind of score at will, and they're a pesky defensive team. However, there is a little bit of concern with maybe Richie Saunders is in a little bit of a slump, and can he get out of that? And we've got plenty of time before the season starts. You obviously got North Carolina next at the Delta Center in Vegas. Is it Vegas? It's Vegas.
North Carolina is at the Delta Center. Villanova is
in Vegas. So plenty of time, and we'll obviously monitor them. But that will do it for us. So this is the Locked On or the Loyal Cougars podcast. Man, I've said that before, and I actually went like a month without saying that. I've actually listened a lot to Locked On because I think Drake Told does a really good job.
Correct.
And if you haven't, go over to Locked On Big 12 podcast, and this is not a plug for them at all. They're not paying me to say this. Drake went to the BYU Utah game, and you got to listen to what his experience was like at the game because and this was not part of the rundown. This just kind of came up because I said Locked On accident. But Drake's experience at BYU, I think, is very much indicative of just like what BYU is trying to accomplish, which is they are putting themselves out there as this welcoming, loving, media-friendly venue.
It was a great week for exposure where the fans showed up. The game was great. We invited and Fox produced a lot of big people there, and they felt welcomed and loved, and more importantly, it had a great football experience, and that's just great for BYU because in the 80s when we were good, social media wasn't a thing, and sports news was not even a thing. And so now that we're good again, I think the world is seeing and feeling BYU in a different way than they have before.
Yeah, and it's great to watch. Any exposure is good exposure, but when you can make it positive, it makes it even better. All right, so this is the Loyal Cougars podcast. I'm your host, Jake Edmonds. That's Tosh Mackintosh. Head over to YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Like, subscribe, comment, give us a review as we keep this thing growing. Iowa State this week. We'll talk about it next week. Until then, we'll see you.
Have a good one.